Well, good morning again, everyone. It's great to see everyone here.
Torej, dobro jutro, lepo, da se spet vsi vidimo.
So, maybe you noticed the song that we sang this morning in English was about the heart.
Torej, mogoče ste opazili, da pesem, ki smo jo prelepeli v angleščini, je bila o srcu.
So, that's going to be the subject of what we talk about today, the heart.
In to je tudi tema današnjega sporočila. Govorili bomo o srcu.
And we're continuing in our study of the Shema prayer I've really enjoyed studying for this.
Torej, nadaljujemo preučevanje te molitve Šema in smo dejansko uživali, ko smo to preučevali.
And I hope you've enjoyed learning with me about the deeper meaning of some of the words that we're looking at.
In upamo, da ste tudi vi uživali, ko ste skupaj z nami iskali globlje pomene za besede, ki so uporabljene v tej molitvi.
So, as we've said, these verses are from Deuteronomy, or the 5th book of Moses, chapter 6, verses 4 and 5.
Torej, kot smo povedali, se ta molitev, te verze nahajajo v 5. Mojzesovi knjigi v Deuteronomiju, 6. poglavje, 4. in 5. vers.
And these formed a prayer in later years for those of the Jewish religion to be recited every morning and every evening.
Torej, iz tega je šla molitev, ki jo Judje vsako jutro in vsak večer ponavljajo.
So here is that reading of Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 and 5. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength.
Torej, takole gre ta molitev. Poslušaj, Izrael, Gospod je naš Bog, Gospod je edini. Ljubi Gospoda svojega Boga z vsem srcem, z vso dušo in z vso močjo.
So from these two verses we look deeper into the word hear, which is Shema.
Torej, iz te molitve smo si že pogledali besede poslušaj, to je Šema.
And that's where this prayer gets its name, Shema.
In tukaj je ta molitev tudi dobila svoje ime, Šema.
We looked at Lord, which is Yahweh, and then last week we looked at love, which is Ahava.
Torej, pogledali smo si tudi besede Gospod, ki je tukaj Jahve, in ljubezen, ki je Ahava.
And so, continuing through the verse, looking at the major words, as I said, today we're going to be looking at the word heart.
In ko nadaljujemo s pregledovanjem teh besed, se bomo danes ustavili pri besedi srce.
So, in the Hebrew language, that word is lebab, or at other times it is said as lev.
Torej, v hebrejskem besedu je beseda za srca lebab, ali pa včasih lev.
And if I'm not mistaken, the word lev in the Slovenian language means lion, right?
In lev v slovenščini tudi pomeni lev.
So that was just a curious thing to me, and I don't think it is related at all to the expression, the heart of a lion.
To je mogoče zanimiva stvar, ki mogoče te besede lev in srce sploh niso povezane, ampak včasih se govori o levjem srcu.
I just thought it was interesting.
Se nam zdi zanimivo.
So the definition of the word lebab or lev has to do with the inner part of man.
Torej, ta definicija besede lebab ali lev se nanaša na ta notranji del telesa.
And if you remember, this all started because of the relationship of what Jesus said in the New Testament about what the most important commandment was. He spoke these same words.
In to se nanaša na to najbolj pomembno zapoved, ki jo je tudi Jezus omenil, da so to najbolj pomembne besede.
And so the Greek word that Jesus used in the New Testament will probably not surprise anyone.
Grška beseda za srce, ki jo pa uporabil Jezus, se pravi v Novi zavezi, pa nas najbrž ne bo presenetila.
So the Greek word is kardia.
Ker grška beseda je pa kardija.
And it's where we get heart doctor's name from, of like a cardiologist.
In iz te besede dobimo beseda za, bi rekel, srčnega zdravnika oziroma kardiologa.
And the definition of the Greek word that was understood at that time is exactly like the Hebrew word, the center of all physical and spiritual life.
In definicija te grške besede je bila enaka definiciji hebrejske besede, se pravi center, središče vsega duhovnega in pa fizičnega življenja.
And in today's culture, all around the world, we talk about the heart being the place from which strong emotions come from.
In tudi v današnji kulturi še vedno govorimo o srcu kot o nekem centru, iz katerega izhajajo vse močne emocije.
So I've got a question here. Has anyone here ever heard of the song U srce mojem je Slovenija?
Se pravi, vprašanje za vas.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see someone smiling. Right? This seems like a classic song in the Slovenian language.
Se pravi, vprašanje za vas, ali ste kdaj slišali za pesem Srce mojem je Slovenija?
If I'm understanding this right, in my heart is Slovenia.
To je mogoče ena malo bolj klasična slovenska pesem.
Have you heard of Don't Go Breaking My Heart by Elton John?
Pa če gremo na angliške pesmi, Don't Go Breaking My Heart, ne zlomi mojega srca, od Eltona Johna.
Heartbreak Hotel, have you heard of that one? Elvis classic there.
Potem je tukaj pesem Heartbreak Hotel, Hotel zlomljenih src od Elvisa.
Then my wife's favorite, Achy Breaky Heart by Billy Ray Cyrus.
In pa še ena pesem Achy Breaky Heart od Billy Ray Cyrusa.
Small joke there. My wife is not a fan of that song.
Okay, mislili smo, da je Monteva žena fan te pesmi, očitno ni.
But we say things like, I love you with all of my heart.
Ampak zanimivo je to, da vedno pač, ko govorimo, ko izpovedujemo ljubezen, ljubim te z vsem svojim srcem.
And I watch a lot of football, and I see a lot of footballers, when they score, they give the heart symbol, right?
In na tekmah, recimo, ko nekdo zadane, ko doseže gol, kažejo razni nogometaši srčke in podobne simbole.
Now the question has to be, why do we do this?
In sprašujemo se, zakaj sploh to počnemo?
In reality, our heart is just an organ that pumps blood.
V resnici je srce samo črpalka, ki črpa kri.
Now, don't get me wrong, it's very important, and when our heart stops working, then we no longer live.
Seveda se strinjamo, da je srce zelo pomembno, ker ko neha delovati, potem ne živimo več.
But in not one single way does any thought or emotion come from this organ.
Ampak v resnici nobena misel, nobeno čustvo ne prihaja iz tega organa.
Those come from, as we know well, from the brain.
Te prihajajo kot danes dobro vemo, iz možganov.
I should say we know that now.
Lahko bi rekli, da zdaj to vemo.
And yet it still does not stop us from talking about our hearts.
Ampak kljub temu, da to vemo, še vedno govorimo o svojem srcu.
And the biblical authors that we read, we're going to read several verses today, talk about the heart in many other ways that might seem strange to modern science too.
In ti avtorji Svetega pisma pa velikokrat govorijo o srcu na veliko različnih načinov, ki se zdijo malo nenavadne za moderno znanost.
But we can totally understand them because we have continued to do the same thing, talking about our hearts.
Ampak mi te pisme lahko popolnoma razumemo, ker še vedno na isti način govorimo o svojih srcih.
They spoke in a way that all of a human's intellectual activity takes place in the heart.
Oni so pisali tako, kot da se vsa človeška intelektualna, se pravi miselna aktivnost dogaja v srcu.
As you read through your Bible, you're going to see that you know things with your heart.
Naprimer, piše, da stvari poznate s srcem.
In your heart is where you understand and make connections.
Da je vaše srce tam, kjer razumete in pa vzpostavljate povezave.
And in the book of Proverbs, as you read through that, you can see that wisdom dwells in the heart. I'm going to read that in Proverbs 14, verse 33.
In pa v pregovorih 14. pogled 33. vers, piše, da modrost prebiva v srcu.
Here's part of that verse. Wisdom rests in the heart of him that has understanding.
tukaj je del tega verza, modrost počiva v srcu razumnega.
And your heart is what you use to discern between truth and error, like Solomon did when he was king.
In srce je tudi tisto, ki se uporablja za razlikovanje med resnico in med zmoto, kot je to Salomon naredil.
1 Kings chapter 10 verse 24 says, "And all the earth sought to Solomon to hear his wisdom which God had put in his heart."
Tako piše v prvi knjigi Kraljev, 10. poglavje, 24. vers. Piše, ves svet je želel videti Salomono, da bi poslušal modrost, ki mu je Bog položil v srce.
So, according to the Bible, the heart is where you think and where you make sense of the world and a whole lot more.
Torej, po Bibliji je srce tisto, kjer razmišljamo in pa razmišljamo o svetu.
In the heart, in the Bible, the heart is where you feel emotions.
V Svetem pismu je tudi srce tisto, kjer čutimo čustva.
You feel pain in your heart.
Čutimo bolečino v srcu.
An example is Hannah did when she couldn't have any children. We're going to read about that in 1 Samuel chapter 1 verse 8.
Se pravi, podobno kot Hana, ko ni mogla imeti otrok, kar bomo zdaj prebrali v 1. Samuelovi knjigi, 1. poglavje, 8. vers.
So there in 1 Samuel chapter 1 verse 8, Hannah's husband is talking to his wife when he saw her in great pain, and he says to her, "Why is your heart grieved?" or "Why is it broken?"
Torej, v tem verzu mož govori s Hano in v tem 8. verzu, del tega verza pravi, zakaj je tvoje srce žalostno?
So on the opposite side, your heart is where you experience joy.
Po drugi strani pa je srce tudi tisto, kjer čutimo veselje.
So in the Hebrew language there in the Bible, to be happy is to be good of heart or to have a heart of joy.
Torej, v hebrejskem jeziku se je temu, da imaš veselje, da si vesel, rekel, da imaš dobro srce v bistvu, ali pa da imaš srce veselja.
So as the definitions we're talking about, we understand the heart is the center of physical life.
Tako da razumemo, da potem je srce središče fizičnega življenja.
And it's also the center of our intellectual and emotional life. So much more than we think about the brain being that part of us.
Tako kot pač potem je tudi srce središče intelektualnega in pa čustvenega življenja. Bolj kot si mislimo, da so možgani del tega.
And now the Bible talks about our heart being where the affections are centered. And in Psalm chapter 37 verse 4, we can see that.
In rekli smo tudi, da je srce središče naklonjenosti, kar se lahko tudi preberemo v Psalmu 37. poglavje 4. vers.
And that verse says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart."
Tam piše, razveseljuj se v Gospodu, pa ti bo dal, kar želi tvoje srce.
So then in the Bible, the heart, it is the center of all parts of human existence.
Torej je v Svetem pismu, v Bibliji, je srce središče vseh delov človeškega obstoja.
And so because of that, it should be protected at all cost.
In ravno zaradi tega je treba srce zaščititi za vsako ceno.
We see that in Proverbs 4, verse 23, it says, "Keep or protect your heart with all diligence, because out of it are the issues of life."
In to vidimo tudi v pregovorih, 4. poglavje 23. vers, kjer piše, z vso skrbjo varuj svoje srce, kajti iz njega izvira življenje.
So now we go further into this study of the heart. Jeremiah believed that the human heart was fundamentally broken and that we should be very careful about following it without spiritual understanding.
Torej, če raziskujemo še malo naprej, je prerok Jeremija verjel, da je človeško srce v svoji osnovi pokvarjeno, zlomljeno in da bi morali biti zelo previdni, če bi mu sledili brez duhovnega razumevanja.
So the children of Israel had not protected their hearts at one point, and Jeremiah had watched a whole generation turn away from God.
Torej v nekem trenutku ti otroci Izraela niso sledili Bogu, so se odvrnili od njega.
And they turned so far away from God that they started sacrificing their children as if that was a good thing. And this was Jeremiah's assessment of the people. And I'm going to read that in Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 9.
Torej, v tem, ko Izraelci niso sledili Bogu, ko so se odvrnili od Boga, so začeli celo žrtvovati svoje otroke, kot da je to dobro. In Jeremija je to videl in si bomo zdaj prebrali, kaj je napisal o tem.
Jeremiah's warning about an unprotected or an unguarded heart was this: the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? Torej,
Jeremijevo opozorilo o pokvarnih srcih v 17. poglavju 9. vers je napisal: srce je zvijačnejše od vsega in zahrbtno, kdo ga more doumeti?
So this is why in the view of the Hebrew prophets, the only hope for humanity is to have a total renewal of the human heart.
Torej, in zaradi tega je v času teh hebrejskih prerokov bila edina možnost, edina rešitev, popolna prenovitev človeškega srca.
So maybe you remember in the life of David, he committed murder and adultery. And after that is discovered, he pleads with God in Psalm 51 verse 10. That's in English, it's verse 12 in Slovene, and I'm going to read that.
Torej, če se spomnite, tudi David, potem ko je zagrešil umor in prešuštvo, prosil Boga v 51. Se pravi, v psalmu 51. poglavje, v slovenskem jeziku je to v 12. verzu.
And that verse says, create in me a clean heart, God.
Torej, tukaj David prosi, čisto srce, o Bog mi ustvari.
He knew that his heart needed to be changed or made different because of his sin.
Torej, David je vedel, da se mora njegovo srce spremeniti ali pa zamenjati zaradi njegovega greha.
If we read further in Ezekiel, that prophet Ezekiel hoped for a day when God said he would do something miraculous with the heart of his people.
Če gledamo naprej, je tudi prerok Ezekiel upal, da bo Bog naredil nekaj čudežnega iz srca svojega ljudstva.
So this is Ezekiel chapter 36, verse 26. And Ezekiel is speaking as if God is speaking. And he says this: a new heart also will I give you, and a new spirit will I put within you. And I will take away the stony heart out of your flesh, and I will give you a heart of flesh.
Se pravi, Ezekiel je napisal tukaj v 36. poglavju, 26. verzi, in on govori v imenu Boga, kot da govori Bog. Piše: dam vam novo srce in novega duha denem v vašo notranjost, odstranim kamnito srce iz vašega telesa in vam dam meseno srce.
And I think this is exactly what we see in people today. People with hearts of stone.
In mislimo, da je to točno tisto, kar danes tudi videvamo. Ljudi, ki imajo srce iz kamna.
We see hearts that cannot be moved by anything, that have been hardened by this world of sin and deception.
Vidimo srca, ljudi srci, ki se ne morejo premakniti. Vidimo srca, ki jih je utrdil svet greha in prevar.
And what is desperately needed is a heart transplant.
In kar je tukaj nujno potrebno, je presaditev srca.
Now, we can't do that ourselves, but God can transform our heart.
Torej, mi tega sami ne moremo narediti. Bog pa lahko spremeni naše srca.
We can pray exactly like David prayed that we just read there. Create in me a clean heart.
Lahko molimo, kot je molil David, ko je molil, ustvari mi čisto srce.
It would only be then that we could love him with all of our heart, as the verse in Deuteronomy says.
In šele takrat lahko ljubimo Boga z vsem srcem, kot pravi ta šema v Deuteronomiju.
With the very essence, the very center of who we are, we could love him in that kind of way.
Da lahko ljubimo z vso našo esenco, s tem našim središčem na ta način.
In our heart where the seat of all of our emotions is, regardless of our past failures.
Ker je srce ta seme vseh naših čustev, ne glede na vse naše napake, ki smo jih naredili.
Because if God has forgiven our past failures, He never remembers them again.
Ker če Bog odpusti naše grehe, se jih ne spomni več.
That is love.
In to je ljubezen.
And that's the kind of love He wants from us. And if you've never experienced that heart transplant, if your heart is still a heart of stone, it does not have to stay that way.
Tako ljubezen si Bog želi od nas. In če vi še nikoli niste občutili, če še niste imeli te presaditve srca, če je vaše srce kamnito, ni treba, da ostane na ta način.
You can come to God exactly how you are right now and let Him transplant or transform your heart.
K Bogu lahko pridete takšni, kakršni ste, in mu dovolite, da On spremeni, transformira vaše srce.
Because once again, the truth is we can't clean our own hearts.
Ker resnica je, da mi ne moremo očistiti svojih lastnih src.
We need Him for that, and He is more than willing to do it for us.
Zato rabimo Boga in On je več kot voljan to narediti za nas.
So the challenge for us is to come to God today through what Jesus did for us all.
Torej, izziv za nas je, da pridemo k Bogu danes skozi to, kar je Jezus naredil za nas.
And going back to the very beginning, that verse we read in Deuteronomy, I want to read that again. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and you shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart. That's what He wants from us, to love Him with everything that we have, with everything that we are.
Torej, če se vrnemo nazaj k molitvi, ki pravi, poslušaj Izrael, Gospod je naš Bog, Gospod je edini, ljubi Gospoda svojega Boga z vsem srcem, se pravi, z vsem, kar imamo, z vsem, kar je v nas, z vsem, kolikor lahko.
If you have questions or you need help with that, please contact us. We would love to help you in any way to better understand this love that God has for all of us and this relationship that He wants to have with each and every one of us, but it must come through Jesus.
Torej, če imate še kakršnakoli vprašanja, kakršnakoli željo, potrebo, bi radi slišali več, ne oklepajte, pridite k nam, z veseljem vam povemo več o tej ljubezni, ki jo ima Bog za nas in ki nam jo je priskrbel skozi Jezusa.
So until next time, may God watch over you, keep you safe and healthy. Goodbye.
Do naslednjič, naj vas Bog čuva, obdrži pri zdravju in se lepo poslavljamo. Nasvidenje.